Papin rouva, a Haberdash Books English translation. Copyright 2026. A note from the translator. I first encountered Juhani Aho in a rather serendipitous way, during a winter evening spent browsing an old Helsinki bookshop. The shopkeeper, sensing my fascination with Nordic literature, pressed a worn Finnish edition of Papin rouva * into my hands. Though my Finnish was then rudimentary, the sheer evocative power of the language, even through the veil of my limited understanding, immediately captivated me. It was clear I had stumbled upon something special. Juhani Aho stands as a towering figure in Finnish literature, often considered the first professional Finnish language writer. He was a master of psychological realism, exploring the human heart with a delicate yet incisive touch. His works offer a unique window into the Finnish soul at the cusp of modernity, capturing the nuances of rural life, the stirrings of national identity, and the timeless dilemmas of love and longing. His importance lies not just in his literary skill, but in his role in shaping the literary landscape of a young nation. For too long, English-speaking readers have been largely deprived of Aho's brilliance. The Parson's Wife *, a tender and profound exploration of a woman's inner life amidst the quiet rhythms of a Finnish parsonage, is a prime example of what we've been missing. It's a story of quiet desperation and burgeoning self-awareness, painted with such exquisite detail that the landscape itself becomes a character, mirroring the protagonist's emotional state. This novel resonates with themes that are as relevant today as they were in 1893. The constraints of societal expectations, the search for personal fulfillment, and the subtle power of connection. My aim in translating The Parson's Wife * has been to preserve the understated elegance and emotional depth of Aho's prose. I've strived to capture the gentle flow of his sentences, the particular cadence that lends such a unique atmosphere to the original. Where Aho uses a specific Finnish turn of phrase, I've sought an English equivalent that evokes a similar feeling, rather than a literal rendering that might flatten the nuance. For instance, the descriptions of nature are so integral to the mood. I spent considerable time ensuring the English evokes the same sense of quiet beauty and subtle melancholy. I invite you now to step into this beautifully rendered world, to meet Elli and experience the quiet unfolding of her journey. May you find as much solace and insight in her story as I have. Samuel Chatwin, Haberdash Books, 2026. The Pastor's Wife, written by Juhani Aho. Elli heard them coming through the garden to the yard, ascending the veranda, and entering the pastor's room. She heard the guest's gait, which felt somewhat familiar. She heard his beautiful, clear voice beside her husband's slightly disharmonious one. She herself had gone to the dining room and mechanically arranged napkins beside the plates. Through the open doors of the room, she distinguished every word, while the servants continuously rattled their dishes in the kitchen. Well, now, fire and tobacco, quick. Do you smoke a pipe or cigarettes? Thank you, let it be, I'd rather light a cigarette. Oh, so this is your parsonage now? This it is, doesn't it look like a nice place? It looks very pleasant and peaceful indeed. There's the main room purdy, and those opposite are the stable and woodshed buildings. There's also a larder ruokaita in one section, and at the end of the larder is a cellar. It's a good cellar, keeps ice until autumn. The cowshed navetta is back there, from where the well sweep Kaivan Vinti can be seen above the birches. It's a brand new stone cowshed, built during my time. Aha, during your time. I had to wrestle with the parish pitié quite a bit before they started building, but a lasting structure it turned out to be. This building should also be renewed. It's old and has a low foundation, but it still serves its purpose. I still have a firm intention to get a new roof, new siding boards, and fresh earth around the base multimukset. As for its land, this place is in unusually good condition. Do you have a large farm? It's not very large, just the cultivation of an ordinary small parsonage pustelli. In good hay years, it might support 2 horses and over a dozen cows. I also sell butter. And you are very enthusiastic about farming. I myself am always involved whenever my official duties verkatoimiltani allow. They are numerous, as there are only 2 priests in such a large parish. Well, but your family? Is it large? There are only 2 of us in the household Talonvecchia, my wife and I. Indeed, your wife, where is she? Oh, where is the old woman Yuko anyway? Let's go into the living room, Sally, just bring your tobacco. It's fine. Elli hears them coming into the living room. The guest seems to go to the window and says, "Look, what a beautiful view of the lake from here." The pastor explains that from the window of the upper chamber Illiskamari, it's even more beautiful, and at the same time he comes to the dining room door. Elli feels like fleeing to the kitchen, but she still remains, rattling the knife drawer. "Here you are, come in now so I can introduce you." She has come in, has gone to the guest, and greeted him. She hears the guest saying, "Nice to renew an old acquaintance. We have met once before. Welcome here." "Yes, I think so. How long has it been since you visited my wife's old home then?" "It must be over 5 years now," said the pastor. "Do you remember, Elli?" "Yes, it has been. Please make yourselves comfortable and sit down." "And imagine, madam, I didn't even know you were married until your husband told me just now as we came here. I think I wouldn't have recognized you anymore. You were with us for such a short time then." "You, Elli, had just finished school then?" "Yes, and then we haven't happened to meet, as I've traveled abroad and spent most of my time in Helsinki. I haven't been here in the heart of the country since my first student years Yliopilasvuosiani." "Well, that's natural then. However, I have always wanted to come to the countryside for at least one summer. This looks like such a remarkably charming place. As we rode from the ship here, I just told your husband that it feels as if I could live here my whole life. I am really glad I chose this place. It was nice that you came here in the countryside. We don't often have the joy of receiving guests." The pastor had gone to his chamber, where some agent had arrived. They remained alone in the living room, Elli and the guest. He had sat down in an armchair, and Elli on a chair at the end of the sofa on the other side of the table. "How is it? Does your father still live? He was such a dear and kind old man." "He no longer lives. He died 2 years ago." "So he has died." We managed to talk about all sorts of things with him, and he was very curious to hear about his old comrades, some of whom had been my teachers. "Yes, he often spoke of you after you left and even expected you to return, as he recalled you had promised." "I did have that intention, but I don't remember my travels suiting it anymore. I traveled to Kajani, and from there by tar boat Tervavenhisa to Oulu. That must have been a very pleasant journey. Haven't you ever traveled that way?" "I have not. You should make that journey sometime. I have never encountered such peculiar nature anywhere in the world." He began to tell about this journey, and Elli noticed that he tried to prolong it to keep a topic of conversation going. She felt that she herself should have invented something, but she could do nothing. She felt completely bewildered, without a single thought. A long silence ensued, interrupted only briefly when the guest again remarked on the beautiful view towards the lake, and Elli said something assenting to it. The guest already resorted to an album and began to leaf through it when the pastor came to rescue them. "Listen, Elli, have you cooked us dinner?" "It's ready right away." Elli took the opportunity to leave. She needed to catch her breath. She had to get out of his sight and hearing for a moment. She hurried to the larder and the cellar to fetch dinner necessities. She heard the lock squeaking, the hinges creaking. She skimmed the cream from the milk churn metapitiste and took butter into a container. She closed the door again and walked across the yard back to the kitchen. She saw the gentleman had moved from the living room to the pastor's chamber, but she did not dare to look up. She heard her skirts rustling strangely and unfamiliar, and feared getting entangled in them. Then she found herself in the garden, lifting glasses from the cold-frame tamalavan and gathering radishes. She rinsed them in water, cut off the greens, and arranged the fruits on a tray. And all the while doing all this, she was simultaneously sitting in the living room, seeing herself there as taciturn and ineffective. And what kind of impression had she made on the guest? Of course, she must have seemed terribly foolish and insignificant. She hadn't even dared to look him in the face. And she didn't really remember anything about him except that his clothes were of a strangely new fashion. A closed blue short jacket and wide gray trousers with black stripes. She had also seen his hands when they reached out to take the album from the table. They were small and fine, and the cuffs were white and clean. But every word echoed in her ears, and every nuance of that familiar, resonant voice vibrated. Straining all her strength, she nevertheless managed to calm herself enough to go into her husband's chamber and say in an official hostess's voice, "Gentlemen, please come for dinner." The invited guest thanked her kindly and almost familiarly, and once they were seated at the table, Elli suddenly felt freer and more confident. She now also had something to do, attending to her duties as hostess. The gentlemen initially continued their conversation about their old school memories and told all sorts of stories from those times. Elli participated only by occasionally laughing along with the others. She now had the opportunity and courage to observe her guest as she sat opposite him. He was as handsome and pleasant as ever, his features just as refined, and his eyes almost even larger than before. His hair was the same, black and slightly curly. But he seemed calmer, somewhat weakened, and perhaps a little worn and even melancholic at a glance when he was not speaking. He did not laugh out loud, but only with his forehead and eyes. All his movements were sure and precise, and he ate smoothly and regularly. Elli could not help but compare the two of them. They were complete opposites. Her husband, round-faced, red-cheeked, fair-haired, and corpulent, seemed to her unusually clumsy and uncultivated. His thick freckled hands, his way of eating, speaking, and laughing now stood out even more than before. She remembered so clearly the reason why they had made fun of him back then, and had so quickly allied against him. Even now, he thought he could detect a hidden mockery in some glances and vocal nuances from the guest, and it seemed to him that the enthusiasm for old memories had not been as real as it appeared. He was quite sure he noticed that the guest was bothered when the pastor ate with a knife and plunged it directly from his mouth into the butter dish. And perhaps he only imagined it, but it seemed to him that during dinner, the guest increasingly turned to speak to her rather than to her husband. Moreover, he began to examine her for longer periods, casting long glances at her, first absently and then more closely, as if to get acquainted and as if searching his mind for old memories. While drinking tea, it occurred to the pastor that he had a photograph of all his classmates, taken in the spring when they matriculated Iliopolexi. He fetched it, and there they both were. Mikko Arnio, even then looking like a good-natured, plump youth, and Olavi Kalm, by contrast, very thin, tall, and discontented. They laughed at each other, and Kalm recounted lightly and naturally, yet with a hint of self-mockery, that when the photograph was taken, he had been unhappily in love. He had deliberately darkened his face and tried to make it as tragic as possible. He told this story, turned towards Elli, and made her laugh along. "Yes, yes," he then sighed, "you may laugh at it now, but then it was no laughing matter. It was my first great sorrow in the world." "And have there been more since?" Elli dared to ask, blushing at her own boldness. "Oh, great sorrows, you mean?" Olavi chuckled in response. "You, at least, haven't truly fallen for anyone yet, have you?" the pastor interrupted. "I haven't. I have happily avoided all the threatening hidden reefs of marriage. But beware," said the pastor, "there are many beautiful girls in our parish Pitya, especially at the parsonage. I know one of them, she came on the ship with me." "Could it have been Leona?" Elli asked. "It was Leona," explained the pastor. "She looked so wistfully from the ship's deck as Olavi got off the ship." They rose from the table, and dinner ended in a cheerful mood.